An adventure on its own. All the people are gonna come, 'cause it's time for PeaCreaLive. Mystery and
Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of PeaCreaLive, which stands for Peaceful Creativity Live. And I'm Dave, and over there on the far side of the screen, you got Arno, and in between us is Chris Hardy, our guest today. We're so happy to have him here.
How you doing?
He is a great friend of mine and a great man and a great coach. And we're going to learn a lot today about handling life's big up and downs. So, Chris, hello. How are you?
Good, thanks. Yeah, I'm good. I feel good today.
That's great. And Arno, how are you doing?
I'm great as well. And I'm super happy about the today's theme, because yesterday we were talking about burnout and balance, and I was feeling pretty low, and today I'm feeling super high. So I'm really happy that Chris brought this theme, and I'm excited to talk about high and low and what we can learn from each of them.
Great. And you actually said, Arno, that we only have Chris for a limited amount of time because he's doing a really cool training soon, and he can maybe tell us about that. But you were doing, Arno, you told me before the show, you actually implemented the energy inventory tool we were talking about in the last show, where you rate things in your life if they're an energy drain or an energy pump. And you said you actually stopped doing certain things in your life, like literally starting today, and it made you feel better.
Yeah, exactly. There is already an activity that I used to do for a community of coaches that it started very exciting, a complete pump, but then over the weeks it started to become a drain. And today I decided that I was going to stop that, and immediate energy boost. So I can talk about it later, but I want to use every second of Chris while he's with us.
Yes.
So
Chris, I'm so glad you're joining us. Chris and I met.
I'm very happy to be here. Yeah.
Great. We were talking on the phone. We became friends kind of on the phone because we got introduced by a mutual colleague, and we were having these phone calls. And it was about like a year of doing kind of like mutual coaching with each other before we met at actually, a plant medicine ceremony where we, and so that's a really kind of, intimate and intense place to meet someone for the first time. But when I got there, I mean, I felt like you were a really good friend of mine already, and we became really, good friends after that. So we collaborate on projects. We've done videos together for corporate work, and we've shared over time the big ups and downs that have happened in our life. And we've supported each other through those moments, and each of us has had some pretty big ones, in the last couple of years. And so that's part of what's present. And then this crisis has happened, and Chris and I were talking, and Chris, you were saying that it was a bit of a, you're a bit of a roller coaster ride. So I want to ask you today, how are you arriving? What's present for you right now with what you have going on?
Yeah, it's good. It's nice to remember the context of our relationship and how we met a long time ago. Do you know who I remembered it was? It was Giles Hutchins, who originally introduced us. He does kind of similar sort of work. But I guess I will this theme of like highs and lows. Let's say, like, I sometimes feel that I don't know about you, but I feel like I can have a particularly dramatic emotional landscape. I can feel sensitively quite a lot. I can get really excited about stuff and go really up, and also get really sad or full of grief or sadness or whatever and go right down. And I mean, particularly recently with this whole COVID situation, I felt like it's been a massive roller coaster, actually, and I think it has for lots of people, and in lots of different ways. So I don't want to kind of try to speak for everybody, but yeah, I felt big time this kind of occasional like real excitement that, holy shit, this thing is happening that I always thought was going to happen. Like this, this creaking old system of business is suddenly like falling on its face, and wow, what an opportunity, and oh my gosh, and then I've got a few GPs who are working like right on the front line and in the UK, and hearing from them like what they're going through, and then feeling this uncertainty about my life and work and money and friendship and all, like,
Yeah.
like this. So been trying to figure out ways to handle that, if you like, and work with that tendency, let's say.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people can resonate with what you're saying. The reassessing, what's going on with my money situation? Oh my God, work, isn't it all stable? What as I thought it was. What's going to happen after this? The government can do a shutdown at any time. You know what I mean? So this is yeah. I think everybody's probably resonates with that feeling, and I would love to hear what has helped you, to handle this. But first, I want to hear what you just said. You talked to some GPs on the front lines of this situation, and you heard their experiences. I'm actually really interested in what you're hearing from them. I've
got three. I know three GPs quite well, or one of them's an anaesthetist, and one of them's working in Scotland, and the other two are working in hospitals in London. And it's been really amazing actually to be able to hear from them, what their experience has been. And I guess like one of the things that I found difficult has been the sort of the trying to know what's going on, the seeking security and the seeking safety in being like, this is the real story about what's actually happening with COVID and with this pandemic. Like there's been such a huge amount of information and chaos and crisis. And I've listened to a few talks on it and heard a couple of things that really helped me. And one of them was that when you have this chaotic situation, there's such a broad scale of information that's going on, of stories and data, that anybody can choose like certain bits of the data and certain parts of the story and talk about that in a really persuasive way that makes it seem like a really big deal and like that's the truth, if you like. And so what my experience was a very disorientating sense of actually how dangerous is this? What's really going on? What do we need to do? Where do I get the real story from? And I realized I was trying to figure out the real story from like desperately like swiping on my phone or, looking at the normal news channels or whatever. And after some time I thought, do you know what, that's driving me nuts. So I'm going to focus. I'm going to just get my stories from people, which seems like a really obvious thing. But then connecting with these doctors gave me such a different perspective than reading about the stories in the news, and actually death is something that our doctors and our GPs and our nurses and our NHS workers, they deal with all the time. And they have this incredible capacity, I thought, to be face to face with what sounded like a completely nightmarish situation at certain points, with the length of hours they were supposed to work and then the lack of equipment and all this kind of stuff. And yet what I got from, all of these GPs that I spoke to was this amazing sense of like responding to a real call to be there right now, like all their training suddenly coming into the fore. Mm-hmm. They're like in it together. There was this camaraderie and sense of like, the nation supporting that clap that we do in England. I don't know if you do it in Prague, like 8 p.m. on Thursday. Like that was actually really meaningful. And then, I just was impressed to hear their sort of like willingness to like be there in this, and that I found a much more beautiful and easy story for me intellectually and emotionally to engage with than the numbers and the statistics and the bigger story that I might be getting through the news.
Yeah.
So that was,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great that you say that. And I think it's important to realize that now we can really feel it because this is COVID, but this can also be said to the normal situation, you know, because there is a world of data out there, depending on which, you know, TV channel you watch, you will get different information. Who you talk to is different. So I like this approach of actually talking to people, you know, that's such a nice way of getting your information and at the same time reconnecting with our fellow human beings. And I really like the approach that you took.
Yeah. And do you know what? The other thing I shared with them an article which has been widely shared called The Coronation by Charles Eisenstein. And I really recommend it. I'm not recommending to anybody to do anything at this time, apart from like very few things. I've got one podcast that I recommend and one article, and that's the article, The Coronation. And in it, he talks about two things that I think are significant here. One is the war on death, and the idea that to like make this effort to extend life at any means possible, and I just thought it was such an interesting reframe of this whole situation that, you know, these GPs are working on this front line, putting these respirators in people that are giving them like a few more days or a few more weeks, and it is like almost this kind of real noticing like what a defunct system we've got. Like in not just in the healthcare, but in so many other areas of the way that we currently live. And I sent it to the GPs because I thought, see what they think of this kind of fairly far out ideas. And both of them, or you know, all three of them were like really, really interesting to consider this idea of like, how do you die? What does like a good death look like? You know, rather than like a desperate sort of elongation of life. Which I just thought was, fascinating kind of question that they resonated with. And then the other piece that felt significant in the article, which resonates with what you were just saying, Arno, was that what this crisis has done is bring to it's like foreshortened many trends that were happening anyway in society. So one absolutely is this abundance of misinformation or fake news. You know, we kind of know, fake news exists, but like, whoa, we've had like a massive big dose of all sorts of stories and confusion, you know. And then also Eisenstein spotted like other trends as well, like increased interaction through screens, okay, and lack of social connection. So I have felt a real resistance to engage with a lot of the online groups, and my singing circle that's like a soulful, heartfelt connection has kind of gone online. Great, some people are really enjoying that, and it means they get the access to it and things, but I cannot do it. I can't get into this because I'm resistant to that growing trend of like increased isolation, you know, increased in martial law, like, you know, sort of the state ownership of our bodies and of what's going on internally with this idea of forced vaccination being possible. Like, you know, so many trends that were kind of happening, they've suddenly gone like vroom, and the curve has gone like this, and that's made me feel pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, you know what I like? I mean, what you're highlighting here is all the different stories that are simultaneously at play in this situation, you know. And I think part of the up and down that a lot of people feel and that we might feel, maybe it has to do with what story we're paying attention to at any given time, you know, and what story we're making our own story at any given time. Because honestly, everything happening here is a story. You know, like whether, you know, there's you can, as you said, you can pull out statistics that tell a certain story. You can pull out statistics that tell a completely different story. You know, the idea of how we approach death, those are two different stories, you know, Death is bad at all costs. We must preserve life at all costs, regardless of that quality of that life. And then there's another story of death where death is a part of life. It's the left hand of life. The right hand is life, the left hand is death, and without one we can't have the other. And it's a natural recycling process that nature goes through. And can we just make people's lives have a high quality instead of trying to eke out another few days? So these are these different stories, and I think which ones kind of blow out your expectations and trigger your own internal emotional triggers, versus which ones make you feel enlivened and make you feel part of something bigger that's happening positively. Which story you choose, that could have a lot to do with the up and downs, maybe.
Yeah, and if I can react to that directly, David, I love that you talked also about our own stories, because I see some empowering message of what do you want your story to be when you look back at it. Was it, oh my God, the outside world was so bad, I couldn't do this and this and this, or on the contrary, well, you know what, this is the cards that we were all given, and I decided to actually make the most out of it. As I read, I did the things that I never do, and I created a story that I'm proud of and that fulfills me, and I think there is this element of personal ownership that's important to keep in mind. But of course you were talking about which stories do you want to pay attention to, and it's kind of reminiscent of what we were talking about yesterday with, where do you put your attention, where do you have your notification, and what do you put your energy towards, what's a drain, what's a pump, and all the negative stories and that are out there can be a real drain if you don't put it under control.
Yeah. So what do you find is helping you, Chris, navigate all this stuff and handle these ups and downs? Do you have any practices or something that's been working for you?
Yeah, I've got a few things. One of the things is absolutely this emotional processing technique that you taught me, David. Basically David taught me this over the years. And I was like, I don't know, always resistant to it, or I never really got it. Or I had to always call him up and be like, I really just go into it and just but just remind me why. But I think finally, because I had a real roller coaster last year. I went through a separation, I got divorced, and work kind of fell apart and all this kind of stuff, and it just boom, I had this huge kind of emotional stuff came up, and so now I feel a bit practiced in it, actually, with this technique of I guess for me what I do is if I'm feeling, I'm sensitive now, I'm self-aware enough to feel the sense of an emotion inside me. I can feel it, like an energy, an anxiousness, like it can rise up to my head and behind my eyes. And I know that I need to process it, because my behavior, my classic, what's it called, coping mechanism is to eat. I just fucking eat, sorry to swear, but I eat peanut butter, peanut butter on toast, and then an apple, and then I'll have some dates, and then I'll have a big dinner, having just had 5.5 snacks, and it's not really unhealthy, and I'm smiling when I do it because I'm in a good mood now, but it's not, it's not particularly it's not a pleasant experience. But the perspective that I try to take in it, and I can't remember where I first read this or got this, but is that I'm experiencing some emotional turbulence inside, some feeling of not being safe in the world, fear of abandonment, whatever it is, a trigger, a childhood, something. And in that moment, I don't have the capacity or the right tool or the right awareness about me to deal with the emotion, to face it, to go into the grief, to go into the bottom of it. And so it's a self-loving act to kind of just shield myself a little bit from the depth of grief that I might otherwise feel by avoiding it, by eating, or by, you know, other things as well, like maybe even exercising actually sometimes, just to get away from it. But then, so that's used just on this idea of perspectives. You know, if I'm finding myself going down or exhibiting behavior that I'm not proud of, like I'm not so bad, but I was really bad on the Instagram and on the phone stuff, you know. But again, like, we're searching for connection, we're searching for intimacy. We want a feeling of being part of something when we're scrolling on our phone late at night, or we want to feel that we're loved if we're like endlessly on dating apps or whatever. So that's okay, and that's an okay impulse to like want to feel loved, and that you're not exhibiting in that moment like the most like best behavior possible is I think a really useful perspective to take. So I always try to come from that loving space. And then when I feel like ready for it somehow, or able, or if I don't have the choice, but then like the emotion, I can really like, I have massive like meltdowns of tears, and I have to like wrap myself. I go into my bed, I light a candle to kind of make it a bit of a sort of contained space that I'm kind of going into, and I wrap myself in my duvets and I just let it rip. Nice. Yeah, and it feels so good, and I'm like, David would be proud of me, man.
I am proud. I'm so proud.
You have your little picture of David next to your bed, and you look at him as an inspiration.
On the altar.
I have the same. Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I think that's so important that that they're coming up, and completely agree with you. Some coping mechanism isn't, we don't have to beat ourselves up for it. It's not, it's just trying to help us. And actually these emotional triggers, they're also trying to help us. I've been experimenting with this therapy here with Katka. We've been experimenting with this therapy that is all about befriending your emotional triggers and having dialogues with them, and helping them integrate by basically rewarding them for the job they've been doing, trying to protect you, because that's what they're trying to do. That's what they're trying to do. So I think, and to get them out, to help them be released, to help them be released of their burden, things like lighting a candle, things like putting ourselves in blankets, that's really, really good, because what it does is it tells your nervous system that you're safe, which lets these emotions come. If you just stay in the stress mode, it's really hard to release these things that are underneath. So, I like that practice a lot, and thank you for sharing that. I'll just support you also by saying that almost every morning I'm shedding some tears as well, during this time, because it's constantly bringing things up for me. So yeah. There's nothing, it's just so ridiculous how stigmatized crying is, when it's like the quickest way to release emotions, that are difficult to handle. It's the quickest way. And this, especially men not supposed to being able to cry, and so we've built this whole society where men don't cry. And so now actually one of the strongest things a man can do, in my view, is stand in his emotions and not ignore them and let them come out with tears, because we've made it so stigmatized in society that now it's like an actually standing for yourself act for a man to let himself cry. I think it's great.
I think you guys are very lucky that you managed to get the tears, because it's, as David was saying, that's such an amazing mechanism that shakes your belly and your face, and it's really make the emotions in motions, and it's such a release, a whole body. It's like a full body workout for your emotions, crying. And I have some problems to release this way, So sometimes I do the same movement as crying, but without the actual tears, and it helps a little bit. And I totally agree with you that this stigma that boys don't cry, it's completely passé and useless. And hopefully it's slowly changing, and we see more and more sensitive man in pop culture and in the medias and everything.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Arno? It also was I wrote a bit of an article about this. Maybe you could put it in I'll put it in the comments underneath or something. And it was called like grief and gratitude in the time of COVID-19.
Oh, nice.
And there's my version of the practice, you know, kind of 2/3 of the way down. And I shared it with one of my GP friends because he'd said in a conversation, sometimes he's walking home or he's on the bus and he feels like this upwelling of emotion inside him, and he says he feels himself welling up, but then it like never quite comes out, you know. But just to add, like it was a practice for me as well for a long time. Like I kind of couldn't also get proper tears coming, and I was a bit like, what the hell is this? And sometimes still, you know, it's not like it always kind of easily comes or whatever. But those little ideas of like making it a safe space, knowing that it's some kind of a practice that I'm doing, that, you know, the other piece of information, the other context that I try to put the practice within, which it comes from Brené Brown, is quite an interesting story. She she does this like qualitative type research. So she researches like into. She asks people to tell stories actually about their lives, and she listens. She has a team of people doing it, and they're looking for certain kinds of trends or what, you know, and they're searching for particular kind of hypothesis, if you like. And one of the questions they had was, she wrote a book called Rising Strong, and it was like, what makes the difference between people who have difficulties, they have trouble, they have a challenge like we all do, and they get taken down by the challenge and they kind of stay down and their life goes on a downward trajectory, or the difference between those kinds of people and the kinds of people who have really big difficulty or challenge and then they kind of rise up stronger on the other side, to make it very simple, if you like. And she said they were looking at all these stories and they couldn't find any kind of unifying piece of information. They couldn't really figure it out. What was it that like really kind of joined all these different types of people together? And in the end, they kind of dug a bit deeper with their questions, and they found that it was this idea of never letting go of your belief in those moments of difficulty, never letting go of your belief that you are worthy of love and belonging. Like, and I just thought it's interesting, like, not that, and in that moment of sadness or loss, you don't have to feel full of love. You don't have to feel belonging, because you don't. I feel desperately alone. I feel unloved. I don't really feel like I love myself. You know, you feel a total, like you have to go into the complete shit and the loss. And then, but somewhere in you, there's like, I put it like a golden nugget in my heart. There's like this sense that I know on a kind of deeper or broader plane, I'm worthy. Even though I don't feel it right now, I'm actually still worthy of a sense of love and belonging. And sometimes holding on to that has been really, really useful in the midst of, you know, difficulty. Yeah.
That's really good. I had a journal the other day. I was writing in my journal the other day, and what came through after one of these emotional processing sessions, because after I release, you know, have some big release of an uncomfortable emotion, that's often when I get the most insights. And one of what came that day was that there's nothing I could do to make God not love me.
Yeah,
you
nice.
know what I mean? There's no level of emotion. There's no action I could take. There's no, there's literally no version of me that is not lovable by the universe or consciousness or source or whatever. You know, God. And there's nothing I can do to stop God from being here right now and loving me. And that was like,
nice.
And when I felt that, I agree with you. I had this feeling of like, oh my gosh, everything is okay. You know?
Yeah.
That doesn't stop the emotions from coming, but that lets me be the space. That lets me be big enough in the space inside myself that I can let them be there.
Yeah.
I love that you made this distinction between what you might feel in that moment on the mental state, that you feel like unworthy of love or desperate, and that there is this deeper knowledge or other knowledge that somewhere, maybe it's, in this moment in a deep low, it's certainly not at the forefront, but you know that it's somewhere, and the fact that it's here somewhere, it kind of give you the strength to continue. I kind of felt like that yesterday. I have something in my journal called Evening Dump, where I just feel like I need to go to bed, but I still have too much stuff in my head, so I just write everything, so that's it frees my mind to go to sleep. And that was pretty sad one, actually, full of, I'm not worthy, I'm never gonna make it, etc., etc. Because yesterday was a tough day, but like somehow I felt diffusely that somewhere there was a belief that just go to sleep and tomorrow it's going to be okay. There was this optimism of okay, you might not see it right now, but you're going to be fine. And today I feel 10,000 times better than yesterday, and that's why I'm so glad that you guys picked this theme, because that's so my life right now. Ups and downs. Perfect.
Okay, well this is great. So Chris, you're finding the emotional processing is helping you. It sounds like you were starting to talk about also that, not getting sucked in to some of these specific details about what's going on, especially in the media, but actually talking to live people and getting their feelings has been really helpful for you. So that's great. Anything else you can mention that's been helpful for you handling the ups and downs?
So I think to go from the downs to the ups. The other thing, like, because they need handling as well, if you ask me, it depends a little bit kind of what we mean, if you like, by the downs and the ups. But I feel slightly vulnerable to share this, but I think I'm on the spectrum of bipolar. Okay. And I think probably a lot of us are on, I think the mental health spectrums of various conditions are they're spectrums. So we're all on there somewhere, and my mother had she was diagnosed with bipolar. I mean, it's a bit of a mystery even exactly what it is and what constitutes a diagnosis. As I understand, a real diagnosis is like is a sort of long-lasting and daily impactful condition. That means you can't just get on with your normal life, and mine is nowhere near that at all. And when I can go kind of quite up and quite high and quite excited and get like a bit like ooh about life and about ideas and about creativity and things, and sometimes it manifests. It's not always comfortable at all. Sometimes it manifests as a lot of thinking, a lot of ideas, and a lot of maybe positivity and self-belief. But it's also can sometimes be kind of quite scattered and things. So practically, like what I do, I put quite a lot of attention, especially in this realm of slight uncertainty. I put quite a lot of attention and effort on organizing what I'm going to do and on prioritizing how I act on the things that I'm going to do, and like I find that really, really helps me because otherwise I can get this sense of urgency that alongside the creativity, alongside like okay, great, and then like I've got to do so many things, bish bash bosh, like try this, trying that, urgency this, urgency that, and then what that often ends up with is ending up in another crash, or the vision that I had. I get sad because I can see this amazing vision for a project or like an idea or something, and then it kind of doesn't quite happen as fast or as amazingly as I can see it, and then it's like this plummet, So anyway, so things like bullet journaling, and various practices with the bullet journal. I got mine here.
Oh, look at that!
I love that
color.
Yeah, exactly, good color. And then specifically, I do a thing called I do two things, okay, that help me, really, really help me in the day to keep focused. Can you see that on my page? They get really fuzzy.
Skype is blurring it out, but yeah, okay, sort of. We can see that now, sort of, yeah.
So it's a messy page anyway, but I do the I do that Steve Covey important urgent axis for a to-do list.
Great.
So and I just find that so useful, you know, because otherwise, like, oh no, I totally resonate just having like too many things inside the head, and then to see where they, you know, where they are. And then the other thing I do is this practice called interstitial journaling, which is like where you write down what you're going to work on for the next like 25 minutes, okay, and then you work on it, and then and then when you start again, you write like even just a few words about what you just did or what you just worked on to kind of clear it, and then what you're committing to work on for the next 25 minutes.
That's great.
And it's really interesting. It's like, you know, it takes a couple of minutes, but so this like column down the left hand side ends up with like the times of the day and what I was planning on working on, and those combined with some other journaling stuff. I mean, it seems like a lot of like random effort, but what it does is it really helps me just be like, okay, I'm going to do this now. And I get, you know, the world may be in chaos. I don't know what's going to come next in my career. I've got 15 different ideas. What about just this for now? And that feels really, really useful for me. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. I love this idea of the interstitial journaling. You know, I hadn't come across that idea before. I mean, I do a lot of journaling, have for years, and I love it. It's totally changed my life. But this idea of actually, you know, writing down what you're going to do. You know, I do that in the morning, what I want to do that day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll do a check-in like later in the day if I feel like my day is off track and I need to check in again. Well, okay, what am I going to do for the rest of my day? My day just got off track. I'm like, I only have a few hours left. What am I going to do with the rest of it? You know, and then, but I love the idea of more constant check-in, or like, what am I going to do right now? And actually writing that down, because we all know that something changes. We use a different part of our brain when we're reading our own writing, when we're writing and reading our own writing, than we're using in our brain when we're just trying to think about it, you know. And that different part of our brain allows us to get perspective on what we're doing. And so I really like that you're this interstitial journal idea, and be like, what can I commit to? What am I going to commit to for the next, you know, 30, 25, 30, 50 minutes? And then, you know, it would be interesting to see, do you stick to that? You know, I mean, for me, it'd be interesting for me to see, do I stick to that, or do I get sidetracked? Does something distract me? Do I get pulled off? You know, I think that's really cool. You have the time and the date of like what, you know, on Tuesday afternoon, here's what I plan to do. Did I actually do that Tuesday afternoon, or did I end up getting distracted? I mean, just what an awareness builder that is.
Yeah. It's really good.
It looks like it.
Go on,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, I mean, the amount of times I find myself being like, okay, I'm going to do this. Just do this first. I'm like, no.
Yeah, totally.
It seems like such a great combination with the Pomodoro technique too, you know, because it's 25 minutes and then you have 5 minutes. So during the 5 minutes, you can reflect on what you did, think about what you're going to do, and then I think it can be a very good combination. Also to avoid planning on doing something and not doing it. I think that having this short window of 25 minutes helps, because it's difficult to go completely off track in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
So I really like this concept. I didn't know it neither before.
No, it's not. It's a good one. But Arno, you speaking of it's like journaling combined with the Pomodoro technique. And I remember someone sharing with me once that 25 minutes seems like a very short period of time, and it is. And intentionally you're supposed to stop. You're not. It's like, it's good if you don't finish your task in 25 minutes. So obviously some things take a long time. Like in the mornings at the moment, I'm doing a session of work in the morning where I'm calling it deep work. Okay, and it's based around this idea that Cal Newport wrote about in his book Deep Work, which I thoroughly recommend to anyone. And by the way, all of these practices I think are really good for people now, because lots of people are working from home and we don't have the normal guidance from being in the office or someone telling us what to do. So this deep work idea is that in the morning or whenever, you've got to create periods of time in your working life where you can focus on one task and be completely undistracted, and also for an extended period of time. So I found it really good, like to do, say, like writing articles or something, just doing it in like a 2 hour chunk. Like and then you don't do anything else, and like it's the first thing you do, and oh my god, it's like amazing how much better the brain is at just like focusing on this one thing, And the but interestingly, on your point about how much you can actually do in 25 minutes, like I found it takes me like 2 hours or sometimes like an hour to write an article, and it all comes out in a bit of a mess, and then I often leave it until the next morning to edit it. And then, but it can take me 2 hours to edit the article, or and I'm like, right, 25 minutes, edit the article, post it, share it online, and then I'm like 25 minutes later, I've done like the first paragraph, and you realize, okay, wait a minute, I have to, modify my targets. But it's interesting it is a self-awareness exercise, to see what do you actually stick to it. Yeah.
I think this is so important for a couple of reasons that are coming up for me right now for people, because one of them is without that deep work and without this continuous checking in with what you really want to apply yourself to, you will find it very difficult to make progress in your life. And I think one of the things that really just stings with a lot of people, and one of the things that really frustrates people, whether they know it or not, is they don't feel like they're making progress toward what they really want to achieve. So, number one, this like these interstitial journaling, the bullet journaling, the daily reflection that Arnaud was talking about, the getting those blocks of time for the deep work. I mean, how are we going to make progress unless we're doing those practices? I mean, you can see when you don't have those containers, don't have those structures, your energy just gets diffused by our naturally in our society by all these different things. And only when we contain our energy like that is it enough to make us have progress in the things we really care about. I mean, think about how different your life would be in 6 months. 6 months is what, like 180 days or something. So you would have, think about how many, if you just did some deep work or some focused work on something you cared about for 180 days, how far you would be compared to where you are now. I mean, this is the kind of thing people are looking for. So I think these tools really help with that. And the other thing that came up for me is on the topic of ups and downs, because one of the things that the phone apps do, they specialize in, is giving us, and news specializes in, is giving us mini hits of ups and downs. I mean, this is how they keep us. This is how they activate our addiction circuits. And if we're not, very, conscious of this, it's very easy that these addiction circuits start to get wired in the brain, and then we feel like we start to crave these things. So what I'm saying is, for example, the news will give you a dramatic, fearful headline, and that's giving you like a mini down that you feel like you need to, oh my God, I got to do something about it. So you click on the article, and then it's got all these notifications happen, or like you'll see the ads for the next article, or you'll get you'll scroll and get some hits from scrolling and hits of dopamine, and then you get mini ups, right? So basically our society is set up in a way that it's constantly motivating these mini downs and mini ups, constantly keeping us in a short-term addiction cycles. Yeah. And the only way to get to actually have a legitimate longer term kind of natural, gradual moving, feeling like we're moving up and becoming more solid in our life. And of course, still having downs, but just not these like extremes, but the gradual, solid upward progression is to get out of this short-termism, to get out. It's kind of related to what you said in the beginning, Chris, where if we get sucked into some of the details happening right now, or look at only one specific news source or something, we're going to get pulled into this, this singular short-term story. These many ups and downs that the apps create, the news creates. These are these short-term mini stories that are keeping us in an addiction cycle versus stepping back, putting them down. What's my longer term story? What am I going to put my focus on? Kind of like Arnaud said, what's the longer term story that I'm going to look back on and say, I'm proud of myself for how I acted right now? You know, how can I put my energy in those places? I think these tools you're talking about are essential for people being able to do that. Arnaud, you were stroking your beard like crazy, so maybe I went on too long.
No. It's I was laughing because, well, first of all, I wanted to talk about progress because that's something we were talking about yesterday on the show, and I think we forgot to say that if people who are watching have questions, they can write it, and if they have questions for Chris, it's time to ask him, or if it's for us, or if stories they want to share, please do it in the comments. That came to my mind, but I wanted to talk about progress because yesterday, you were saying, David, that it's important to have this chunk at the beginning of your day where you do this one thing that will give you the feeling that you made progress. And I love that. And actually tried to, no, actually I didn't try. I applied it today as well. That's another thing that put me in a good mood. And I had this little window of where I did this one thing that give me the feeling that I made progress toward,
Nice.
On the path. So that's great. And the reason I was laughing when you were talking about this short-term circuits is that sometimes I offer it to myself. After a long productive day, I like to go on, these articles like, you will never believe what happened to Nick Nolte, and you click on that, and then you have like 5 other articles who are like, the clown of It looks incredible without his makeup, and then I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm just diving into
Yes.
short-term bullshit, and I'm like,
so
yeah,
funny.
such a bliss,
So funny.
But the bad thing is that when this happens, when I'm supposed to work, this is less enjoyable. But sometimes I'm like, okay, dude, you worked the whole day, you've done your parts, now just embrace your addiction to mini highs.
Yeah, well, that's okay, man. I know you're doing the work. You're not, you're using it intentionally, so that's okay. And nothing is bad by itself. We're gonna use it intentionally.
And also, you will never believe what happened to Nick Nolte. So that's worth it.
Oh my God! Post it. Show notes in the show notes. Post the link. What happened to Nick Nolte? What does the clown look like without his makeup? Post it in the YouTube notes.
It's Nick Nolte.
Looks like Nick Nolte. Yeah.
Hey, but something it makes me think of both of what both of you are saying. Actually, this in the other piece of like content that I recommend at the moment is a podcast interview with a guy called Martin Shaw, Dr. Martin Shaw. He's an English like storyteller and mythologist, and talking of like this like short-termism, and addictive cycles. And what this podcast does so well is to look at this COVID pandemic in like a much bigger perspective. Like let's take like a much larger, broader look at the time and space, and see how does this sit within our larger human narrative. He talks about like, and the myths of today are the stories. They're the underlying stories that make up the way that we perceive and think about our world, and those stories, they're our perspective. They're the perspective that we choose. And one of the pieces that both of these guys speak to is this idea that we have an addiction to fossil fuels, and we live as we interact with these fossil fuels as an addict does, to avoid pain, avoiding the discomfort of feeling at home in the world, of feeling part of nature, of feeling the love that we should just intuitively exist within as human beings. We've cut ourselves off from that by mistake or whatever we've done, but we've cut ourselves off from it. And so we desperately need all the stuff that the fossil fuel addiction provides: the speed, the shopping capabilities, the junk food, the transport, the just general distraction of life, like as if we're an addict. And what we're having right now, it's not so relevant for people like us. Perhaps maybe we're not so kind of in this like story of addiction with fossil fuels, but we are as well. I mean, I am. But what we're having is an interruption of this addictive tendency, and it feels a bit like cold turkey, or a bit like you've taken the crack away from the crack addict, and we're a bit like, oh, what the fuck, what's happening to my life? Like, oh, and I am, terrified and insecure and unsafe and all of this. But if you think of the addict, the addict's timeline of in a larger scale, like from the timeline perspective of the whole of their life, or from multiple lives, or from 200 years, you've got one person coming into their cold turkey experience, or you've got us as a human species coming into this moment where our addiction to fossil fuels is interrupted. Like it in fact, it's only a blip in what is anyway only a blip in the history of the geological time frame of the whole planet.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, whoa, okay, makes me be like, there's a bigger thing going on here. There's like this, there's some mythological unfolding happening here, and to get caught in the hysteria and the conspiracy theories and the numbers and the hype is to lose track of that, is to lose connection with that mythological broader perspective. And my feeling is that in being in contact with that larger story, it feels more peaceful, feels more easy, more joyful somehow.
Great.
Yeah.
That's a great tip. I love how you said in there that we're choosing our perspective. There is no more important time than now for people to realize you get to choose how you interpret this situation. Maybe you don't get to choose. Maybe you lost your job and you didn't want to choose that. Maybe your money stopped coming in. You didn't choose that, but you get to choose how you interpret that. You get to choose the story you tell about yourself in that situation. So, and the story you tell about the world. And I love this idea of looking at it from the grand view. In looking back on this, there's one person I follow on Instagram, and she said, we're going to look back on this, and she was saying it in a very positive way. Like, we're going to look back on all the amazing changes humanity is going to make, over the next, 10, 20, 30 years or whatever. And we're going to look back on those changes and say, you know what, it all started during COVID-19, and this is like, who knows what this period will look like from a 50, 100-year perspective. But we're all
totally
here building that story together, so let's be really intentional about what we're trying to build. Do we want to build a world going toward one direction that looks really, really uncomfortable, or do we want to take this time to take stock of what really works for humans and build a world going in that direction, which we absolutely have the power to do based on what story we want to be in. So I think that's really, really, really useful perspective. Take that wide view.
Yeah.
Gee, I wish there would be a website that would kind of encompass all of this, this new approach of the world. It could be called, I don't know, relovution.com or something, David. No? What do you think?
Yeah, well, man, we talked yesterday about the burnout. Right now it's one page. But yeah, this is what, Chris actually really has been I'm going to put you on that page as a collaborator, Chris, because you've really been an inspiration for the idea of the relovution, which is basically recreating our work, our relationships, and how we contribute to the world from a love first perspective,
Nice.
But why? And you'll recognize this phrase. Why? Because that's how we build the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, and Charles Eisenstein's work that you have turned me on to, that I know you're a big fan of, and thanks to you, I know about him, has really inspired me. I mean, his idea of sacred economics and, what it means to kind of have a gift-based economy instead of a debt-based economy. This is just an idea that appeals to me so much. So I'm using the relovution as an experiment in also the gift-based economy. And a lot of that, it's a project that is super exciting me right now. And that's the name of the YouTube channel this show appears on. And it's going to be the home of my work very soon. And I just, thank you to you for sending a lot of inspiration my way to help create that.
No, you're really welcome. It's lovely. Thank you for saying that. It's lovely to hear that. It's lovely to hear that you feel that I've brought some of that inspiration and direction, into you and your work, because I've felt a huge amount from you over the years, into my work. But just to finish with a funny story, you yesterday. Oh no, not yesterday. Like, I think it was about a week ago. David and I are part of it. We're associates in a company, coaching and training company, and it's got a lot of very spiritual and open-minded people in there, and often work chats can be quite kind of work related, and this leadership type thing and this business thing, and what are we going to do about this? And we were on a group call the other day, and I was facilitating it, actually, wasn't I? And I didn't give David very much time to speak, and you had to go, and it was like near the end of the hour. But David just came in and was like, it was described as dropping the love bomb on the meeting. Which was so good, I thought. It was like, I can't even remember what you said, but it was basically like, guys, love is the key, okay? Whatever decision, whatever needs to happen, just love. Just love. And everybody was like, okay, thanks, Dave. He's like, I've got to go now, guys. Okay, bye. But, that's also massively what you brought into my life. Okay, just like follow those feelings. Like, try and listen into your body. Like, listen into that heart. What does your heart want right now? What does your heart believe in? Like, let's see, how can we go towards that? What do I need to show myself right now? Like, that's been big, because I was completely not orientated towards any of that sort of a practice or anything before you came into my life. So, and now I know those things have really impacted and influenced me. So I'm really grateful.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for saying that. And I know that you bring these other people. I've had meetings with people you've coached, and they've talked about the amazing shifts that they've had, like that one of the GPs that you might be talking about, who's in Scotland.
Yeah.
I talked with her, and so if anybody wants to find this guy and there are things that happen in coaching conversations. There are things that happen in the conversation between Chris and I, and Arnaud and I, that are, this do not happen when I'm sitting and thinking for myself. It's a completely different, even if I'm journaling for myself, even if I'm writing, there's so much we can do on our own, but we're not here to do everything on our own. We're here to do things in relationships. So if you want to find this guy, Chris, who's got amazing insights, can help you get perspective, can help you navigate the ups and downs of this time. His website is on the screen right now, chris-hardy.com. And, I hope people reach out to you, because, this is everything you've been through in the last couple of years, with your divorce and some work falling apart, and constantly, you've been working for yourself for a long time, and you're so walk the talk of what you're sharing. So I know that anybody can learn so much from you. So thanks so much for being here. I mean, this is a great show. I'm going to give Arnaud the last word,
thanks,
maybe.
Man.
But this has been an absolutely great show. We've had so many interesting tips about how to handle the ups and downs, especially what's going on right now. So let's just do the recap before we run out of time. Arnaud, what are your main takeaway thoughts, and then we'll give Chris the last word, actually.
Well, instead of a recap, because I'm not really good at recapping things, I wanted to go back to the very beginning and say that, we are experiencing this high and low, and this is actually something that can be taken as a gift or an opportunity, because if we're experiencing it, if we're feeling really high or really low, it means that we are open enough to our internal world. And I remember very clearly when I was a teenager, I decided that that's what I wanted in my life. I wanted a life who goes like this, not a boring life who goes like that. And at the time I meant, I just want to party and do stupid stuff. But later it became that, no, I mean, if I'm feeling sad, I want to embrace it and be really sad, and experience the full depths of this emotion. And if I'm feeling excited and happy, I just want to feel it all, completely. Because all of these are just events that appear in our field of consciousness. And from that point of view, they are neutral, It's like they're all equal and neutral. And that's a miracle that we get to experience all of this. So this is what I would like to put at the end, that, okay, there is the mere fact that we're able to experience super low and super high is a miracle, is a gift, is something that we would miss heavily if we couldn't have it, So that's what I wanted to share.
Thanks, Arno. Thanks, Arno.
And Chris, thanks for being on the show as well.
No
thank you
problem at
so
all.
much,
Thank
Chris.
you.
Anything you want to leave our audience with?
I think probably just only for me that what's been really useful is to choose to be careful with what I'm taking in and information wise. So following shows like this or my favorite podcasts or whatever it is, or reading, like I've been reading like science fiction books just to kind of, but like those sort of positive like ways of nurturing myself with the information that we often don't think about, the information that's coming in and how we can curate it. So just being aware, like exactly like this type of show and other positive, life affirming, useful content, I think is the way to go.
Yeah, great, perfect. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much, both of you.
Thank you, David. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, this was a great time.
Lovely.
And thank you, anybody who watched the show, all our viewers out there, and all the sponsors. Thank you for continuing to send us so many sponsor emails. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. We just have so many requests for sponsorships, and we really
but Exxon, please stop calling. Exxon,
yeah,
please stop calling.
make sure we choose the right ones that match our values. So, if you keep, there's a website underneath the show on YouTube where you can find the link to this stuff, and we'll put some other links there that we mentioned in this show, and also you'll find the link on how to stay in touch with us and get updates and on our amazing outro, which I'm about to click now. So have a great time, everybody out there. Until next time, talk to you later.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.